Do you know Mahmoud Darwish? Mahmoud Darwish is a Palestinian poet and a legend. He wrote many books, many poetry, and he inspired all the Palestinian people for many decades. And as I was coming to this event, one of his poems came to my mind, in which he said, "Man ana li'aqula lakum ma aqul." Who am I to say to you what I'm going to say to you? And here I am. I say it again. Who am I to say to you what I'm going to say to you? I'm a very simple Palestinian person, and I have nothing special to tell you. I'm a very average Palestinian, but I think I was a little bit lucky to have lived, because I must have been killed by now. But I think I'm going to say a few words to you, maybe because these words might make me feel a little bit better, as a vent maybe, because I have been going through a lot. Anyways, last night I couldn't sleep until 8 a.m. At 5 a.m., I was still in my bed trying to sleep, and I couldn't, and then I saw a tweet from my flatmate and my brother-in-law, Mustafa. And he wasn't also able to sleep, and he tweeted this: "I am shocked. My dear friend, colleague, surgery mentor, Dr. Khalid Hamouda is kidnapped by the Israeli forces. Dr. Khalid is a peaceful, talented, dedicated surgeon. He trained me on several surgical skills. He recently lost almost all of his family, including his wife and daughter, and he put a circle to his friend." So his friend was one of the many hundreds of Palestinians who were in the Israeli army pictures, who were detained in northern Gaza. I'm sure you have seen the photos. Unfortunately, the Israelis said that these Palestinians who were detained, stripped naked, are all Hamas terrorists or fighters. And then my friend told me, he identified his colleague, his mentor. And I asked him, between me and him, and I told him, "Mustafa, do you think he was a member of Hamas?" And he swore to me, he never belonged to any political party. He was just a civilian. And that's why I don't like the Western media. Because the Western media has always given Israel the cover and the atmosphere to do their genocides against the Palestinian people. The Western media took that picture and circulated everywhere, and they told everyone that Israel is only killing the terrorists or the Hamas fighters or whatever. And unfortunately, people have believed them. Then I spoke to Mustafa and I told him, "Tell me more about this person, about Khalid, the doctor who was kidnapped." He told me he was one of the best medical doctors in Gaza. But in this war, he lost his father, who was a pioneer. He was a doctor, a pioneer doctor. He lost his brother, who was also a doctor. He lost his other brother, who was a businessman, and his wife and his children. And Khalid himself lost his wife and his kids, and his home was demolished before he left to the school in order to seek refuge. And it is there where the Israeli army came and took Khalid away from his people. And then Mustafa was a little bit sad. Mustafa himself lost his father in this war. And he told me, his father was also a medical doctor, a pioneer medical doctor, and he told me something that hurts me a lot. He told me that every time he posts about his father, he feels embarrassed because he can't compare his tragedy to other Palestinians who have lost many family members. So it eventually became losing only one family member too little to talk about them or to post about them. And I know Mustafa said that because he knows my story. And my story is an old one, but it ended with the 22nd of October 2023 in the war. When my family were sleeping in their home at 4 a.m. when Israel bombed my home and killed my family. In my home there was my father, my 2 brothers, my 3 sisters, and 14 of my nieces and nephews, actually 15 of my nieces and nephews. All of them were killed except for one nephew. His name is Omar, and he's 3 years old. He was injured, and he was retrieved from under the rubble. And Omar is only 3 years old. I always think of Omar. Omar lost his father. Omar lost his grandparents. Omar lost 4 of his uncles, 3 of his aunts, and 14 of his cousins. And he was injured himself. So when this happened to my family, I decided not to stay silent. I decided to challenge the Western media and how they talk about the Palestinian people. Because I know the theme of today is about the fall of the empires. And I believe that the biggest empire that have been subjecting the Palestinian people to humiliation and subjugation and oppression is the empire of the Israeli propaganda and media. So I decided to talk about my family and to post about them. I talked about my father, who's 75 years old, who was born only a few months after the Nakba. And he has endured all the atrocities that Israel has committed against the Palestinian people. He has endured the war in 1967, the occupation of the Gaza Strip, the Second Intifada, the First Intifada, the war in 2008, the war in 2012, the war in 2014, the war in 2019, the war in 2021, and the war in 2023. And I wrote about them. And I posted about them day and night until people get to know my story, get to know my family. And there, where the Western media came, they started calling me every now and then to have me interviewed by one of their anchors. And unfortunately, their interviews were more humiliating and descending than I ever could imagine. I'll give you an example. In one of the interviews, I told one of the anchors, the hosts, that I lost 21 family members, including 14 kids, my nieces and nephews. And he told me, they're just collateral damage. It's okay. Another person, another anchor, told me that Hamas killed my family. Well, I know who killed my family. Another one asked me if my brothers and sisters were close to me. Another one told me that I shouldn't get into a war of words and hate while I was criticizing the Western media coverage. One of them told me that the international law doesn't matter. They don't care about the international law because the international law says the occupation is wrong. And one of them told me that the UN is a spin force. And in the comments, many questioned the reality that I lost 21 family members. And one of them asked me if I condemned Hamas only a few days after I lost my family. And one of them insisted that I should call Hamas a terror organization. And this is why I believe that the Western media is responsible for the killing of my family. Because no matter what Israel does, because no matter what Israel does over the past 75 years, no matter what Israel does, It is always their actions are justified by the Western media, that the Palestinians are terrorists, that the Palestinians are anti-Semite, that the Palestinians don't deserve democracy or life, that the Palestinians should never have their own sovereignty over their own lands. It is always the Palestinians die and the Israelis are killed and massacred. It is always the Palestinian people are collateral damage. It is always the Palestinian innocent, the children don't matter because they're not white. And that's why I will not forgive the Western media. I will never forgive the Western media. And I believe us, the Palestinians, we have been defying the Western media for a long time, and now we are using social media to defy the narrative of the Western media, and we are making a huge success. But I also believe that it's not only the Palestinians who have the responsibility to share their stories and to talk about their suffering and to send their message to the world. I believe it is you, the people who live in the UK and America and the free world. You have even a bigger responsibility towards the Palestinian people to share their stories. And allow me to be harsh with you a little bit. We will not forgive you if you do not tell our stories and convey our message. We will never. My nephew Omar is only 3 years old now. And I told you how many people he has lost and how he lost his home. And one day he will grow up to be 18 or 20 years old. And he will see his pictures when he was injured at the hospital, and he will see the pictures of his family he has lost. And he will never be with a father. His father died. But one day when he grows up, he will come maybe here to London, and he will ask you, what have you done after you heard the story of my family? I leave this with you. Thank you very much.